Chair of the Aboriginal Carbon Foundation. I also sit on other boards, including the Terrain NRM in Queensland and North Queensland, the Wet Tropics region, and also the acting CEO of NAILSMA, Northern Australia Indigenous Land and Sea Management Alliance. I just want to take this opportunity just quickly to acknowledge world's Indigenous people who are attending this event, and just do a call out and a shout out and acknowledgement of the people in the lands that we're on, and also recognise Indigenous sovereign rights all around the world. And it's been a real eye-opener just to go around and listen and enjoy some of the discussions, and also be awoken by some of the discussions as well, and the passion that I hear from Indigenous people all over the world. I'm a Jabbergai man from up near Cairns, in the hills on my father's side, and Judable around the lower Atherton tablelands on my mother's side. And I've been working in and around land management for nearly 30 years, over 30 years, and also in and around carbon for the last 10. This discussion is about a number of things, and I just want to spend some time just to introduce what we're talking about today. So the Aboriginal Carbon Foundation was founded some 15 years ago, and we've predominantly worked in and around project development, but around advocacy and Indigenous engagement within the carbon industry, but not just in the industry itself, but also advocating and feeding into government. And it's really only in the last 4 or 5 years, from my experience, that we started seeing other aspects of Indigenous, broader Indigenous involvement in the carbon industry. Just want to acknowledge Sissy Gould-Birch from the Indigenous Carbon Industry Network, the chair of that. And so that's the likes of what we're starting to see develop now, is that, you know, there's an industry body being formed there as well. But across Northern Australia, there's been active Indigenous carbon industry for a number of years because there's a Savannah Fire methodology, and that's we're starting to see a steady growth within other methodologies. One of the 32 methodologies adopted by the Australian government, the Savannah Fire, but there's other methodologies in there that we're starting to see Indigenous involvement and engagement in as well within Australia. Just a little bit more about ABCF. So we've started to expand and have some discussions with our near neighbours in the Indo-Pacific region around how we support their development and movement towards sound carbon industry development. And we've had the opportunity in Australia to have, you know, methods and research and development around those methods occurring for a long time, and then good sound legislation in and around that space, sometimes restricting legislation, but nonetheless something that a framework for us to be able to interact with around the carbon space. So what we're seeing in the Indo-Pacific region is really groundbreaking work that's going on, and the risk is around that is that, you know, the governments play catch up with the actions and activities that are going on within the communities, and there's risk within that. So with our involvement, we're trying to work in a sound way through with the East Timorese government, and also with East Timorese people. We've brought delegations out to Australia for them to attend the Carbon Market Institute big annual gathering, but also to get an understanding of where and how Indigenous people in Australia engage around the carbon space. And so it's with that we've got Pedro, and I'll let Pedro introduce himself as he comes up, but he's from the National Designated Authority within the East Timorese government. Lisa McMurray will talk on the core benefits framework, which is really about having a process for verification and sound identification of projects from the Indigenous point of view. And Lisa will talk a bit more about that. And then Rowan Foley we'll wrap up our discussions. But that's basically what we're talking about, but I just wanted to give you a bit of a grounding on where we're sitting, and like I said, some of the work that we're doing, not only in East Timor, but also with the First Nations Resource Foundation in Fiji as well, and it's the same basis to be able to assist from the community level, their push towards a carbon industry and what that might look like in terms of methodology, and then out of that, verification, but also high integrity credits. So I might hand over to Pedro, and Pedro will introduce themselves and the work that we're doing in East Timor.
Thank you, Barry. Well, my name is Pedro da Costa Marsal. I'm from Timor-Leste. I'm the president of a government agency that is directly responsible for implementation of Article 6 and also as a focal point for GCF and UNFCCC. I've been very happy and thrilled to be invited for this session by the Australian Carbon Foundation. And it's my pleasure to be here to share some of the perspective that we have back in Timor-Leste in terms of the carbon industry. We know that carbon industry has been there since the CDM time until now, and now we have this Article 6, and we want to explore the opportunities that carbon industry can offer, especially for Timor-Leste as least developed countries and all very small island developing countries. So this is an opportunity for us to be here, and also we can share some of the project that is already going on in the country and what is our initiative and preparation to involve in the Article 6 implementation, especially Article 6.2 and 6.4. But at the moment, we do have some good projects in the voluntary market. Two has been already registered. One is under gold standard certification, and the other one with the Plan Vivo. And some, which is now in the expansion to be registered in the gold standard. So now it's in the process. So this is some development that we have. But what is the priority for the government, especially my office, NDA, we are now doing is to ensure that the carbon project and the incentive it offers by the carbon credit sales is really benefit the community. And to make sure, we are now trying to establish the mechanism, the procedures, the policies that need to be established at the national level to ensure that carbon project is deliver the benefit, core benefit that can really change the livelihood of the community, especially the local community and the indigenous people. So one thing we want to ensure is the core benefit, the additionality. In order to have the good integrity of the carbon market, we need to ensure the additionality, meaning that there is core benefit that can be benefit the livelihood of the community from the incentive that provided through the carbon credit sales. So we need to ensure that. And the carbon project need also to have the permanence. Permanence meaning that it must be there for a long time, and it needs to be really provide the impact, contribute to the impact of the emission reduction and removal. So we need to have that mechanism in place, and which is also need to ensure the double counting issues, which is really a complex issues at the moment, because we have different projects going on under the voluntary, and then also we will have the registration under the regulatory market that is now still going on to be established. But what we are trying now is we want to establish our national register first in order to consolidate the voluntary carbon market register to ensure the accountability of the credit, accountability of the mitigation activities that has been there, and to ensure the recording and also later, if the regulatory market is established and functioning, we would be easily to integrate with that system. But at least we are at the national level, we have the register that can account to ensure the transparency and then to ensure the prevention of the double counting. And the next one, we need to ensure that the good carbon integrity is to have the contribution to the sustainable development, especially to ensure the social and environmental safeguards. This is very important, So we, from the government, we need to facilitate, ensure that must be implemented. Because, from countries like Timor-Leste, and I believe that other LDC countries, that it's very still in the initial stage of establishing the system and infrastructure for the carbon market, is very vulnerable to be ready in the international market. So we need to ensure that institutional strengthening, capacity building, and then training is very important. So this is what we are looking for, to first establish the legal framework for our NDA, and also to ensure the institutional strengthened, and then infrastructure and tools that is required to facilitate all this carbon project is there for us to really align or integrate with the market under the 6.2 and 6.4. So I think the important things that we want to ensure is we are trying to funnel the carbon incentives back into the community on ensuring that the benefit sharing is really there when we go into the international market. Because at the moment, our condition is we don't have the domestic market like the Australian that already have the very advanced and sophisticated market in place. And we are trying for the international market. So to ensure that benefit is sharing back to the community, we really need to be prepared and to know how to track the benefit that is coming back. So that's why we are trying to ensure the mechanism in place for funneling back the fundings into the local communities, and then to the communities that is directly involved in the activities. So the carbon incentives that we are going to have under the regulatory market will try to establish a fund that can be channeled back to the community by doing the adaptation and mitigation activities. So this is what we are trying to do, and then it's now going on. The work is now under development, and we also try to harmonize all the voluntary projects that is now going on in the country. So I think this is from my side, and thank you.
Thanks, Pedro. Thank you, everyone, for coming out to see us. It's a good turnout. Happy about that. We're doing some work with a DFAT-funded program called Climate Resilience for Nature, and we're one consortium of 6 consortiums, and we're working with the Timorese government and the civil society in Timor through a large organisation called Catholic Relief Services. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about those projects, and then down the track when they can become carbon projects, which we hope they will be, that being able to verify the outcomes, the social, cultural, environmental, economic, political, health outcomes of that, and the principles that we apply to that process. So at the moment we're partnering with our civil society organisation in 2 districts, Vukeke and Bokau, and there are 5 projects in each one of those districts. They're agroforestry projects, and as Pedro was saying, they can't just be carbon projects, they have to be about benefiting the communities, and these communities have some of the highest malnutrition rates in the world, so you can't eat mahogany trees. So part of these projects need to have food. Another element is soil stability and livelihood. So I'm not going to talk too much about that, but if these projects do go on to become carbon projects, then how we're going to attract good money for the communities is through verification of those outcomes. And for us, Aboriginal Carbon Foundation, we got funding through the Queensland Government to develop a process that we call Core Benefits Verification Framework, and we borrow that term core benefits from the Kimberley Land Council, who really see the work, the outcomes as the core of these projects, and the carbon comes after that. And Rowan uses an analogy quite a bit about a cake. So we talk about the work being the cake and then the carbon being the icing. And in Timor context, we talk about chili and rice. But so we got money from the Queensland Government. It took about 2 years to develop that process, lots of workshopping and so, one part of it is like its impact measurement, evaluation, verification of these claims, these outcomes. But for us, more importantly, it's a capacity building opportunity because, as Sissy was saying this morning, we really need to have Indigenous people leading all spectrums of this work. So not just like on the ground, but actually in this context, the people who do this verification work are Indigenous people. And we've got a training course in Australia, so we train people and those people then become the verifiers to go to another community, spend a week together. It's not light touch. It's not someone from Canberra or Brisbane flying up with a clipboard for, 2 days. It's actually a week long building relationships, and there's a whole host of tools. And for us, it's about redefining that narrative around who an expert is and it's employment as well. In a Timor context, there's, I think, 30 or 300 forest rangers who graduated last year. They're the people that could be doing this work. So some of the key principles of that approach are Indigenous to Indigenous. So for us, building internal Indigenous networks, because Indigenous people don't need to be told how to work in someone else's community. So those people are the people who are going out, building those networks, reading the lay of the land, talking with the right people, following the right protocols. Another key component of it is Aboriginal ownership. So, this sort of work is born from people's work like Professor Linda Smith, who's a Maori woman who pioneered decolonising methodologies, and Professor Aileen Morton-Robinson. I know some of you will know Frantz Fanon and Paulo Freire. I mean, this is a theoretical framework that this work is really embedded in. It's all about challenging those, settler colonial and neo-colonial impacts and putting Indigenous people front and centre of all of this work. It's place-based and mob-based, so it's not one generic template that gets applied everywhere, because we know, and as Paulo Freire says, that people most closest to any initiative and most impacted by it need to have control of what's most important to measure. And in Australian context and all around the world, Indigenous people have been researched to death. So we don't enforce prescribed indicators. We don't make someone else determine what's important to collect. It's all generated in place. We had some issues with that. Some of the advisory people that we had to jump through many hoops couldn't get their head around that you couldn't have indicators. But we do have indicators. They're just locally born ones. So essentially, the methods for collecting data is storytelling and yarning, and we triangulate with the existing research that's there. And some of the communities we work with have 17 research projects on the go. So we're not going to come in and say you need to collect extra research because so much of it is already there. And we use a strength-based approach, so very much like what Janine was saying this morning, we challenge that deficits discourse, that problems narrative. This is all about flipping that, because there's so much wealth, so much talent, so much resources in all of these communities, and we're drawing on that and the skills that exist. And the final point is data sovereignty. So we actually have an app around this, and at all of those points in the app where we collect data, there are permissions pages, they're password protected. Sissy made a good comment the other day about cyber security, and I think that that's something we need to be really mindful of where we store this data. But essentially, none of that data can even leave that app unless it has all the right permissions. So, yeah. And that's what, the work that we're doing in Fiji and Timor and Australia, that's the way that we verify those claims. And it's not we, it's Aboriginal people on the ground working with another nation. Yeah. Thank you, Tomas. You want to talk?
Thank you, Lisa. I'd just like to acknowledge our chairman, Mr. Barry Hunter, and I'd like to acknowledge Pedro as the president of the NDA. I'd like to acknowledge Sissy as the co-chair of ISIN. We were invited to come to Timor-Leste about a year ago, working with people on the ground. We've met with the NDA. They invited us to come back about a month ago, and we gave a talk at that conference. And then from there, we were invited to meet with the Vice Prime Minister. And so we've now signed an agreement with the Timor-Leste government to support NDA, to support Timor develop their own carbon economy, their own carbon industry. This supports the independence of Timor. Prime Minister John Howard sent the troops over to support the independence of Timor. The Timorese fought a war of independence for 24 years to gain their independence. They had the Portuguese in Timor for over 460 years. What we are now not going to do is undermine their independence. And can I just get the next slide? Guys, can I get the next slide? We are not going to undermine the independence of the Timorese people by bringing in colonial companies to take their carbon, to tell them what frameworks to operate within, and to make a huge profit. These eco-colonial companies that operate throughout the world, and they are in Fiji as well, many Indigenous people have concerns. Many Indigenous people want to have their own framework. They want to have their own carbon credits. They want to have their own registry, their own code of ethics, their own trading platforms, their own permissions in place. If you do a carbon project in Timor, you need permission from the NDA, you need permission from Shanana, you need permission from the Timorese people. And you should pay a little bit of tax to the Timorese people, an export license. If you do a project in Fiji, the Fijian government should approve that with the support of the Fijian people. And we are working with First Nations Fiji to develop their own carbon projects, to develop their own code of ethics, to develop their own public registry. People can do this. People, you can be independent. The B plan is to use these guys, to use the colonial companies to come in and to undermine your independence. And I've spoken to these people and they said, Rowan, we know all about this. We've been dealing with it for a long time. What we want is our own independent process. We don't want the British, we don't want the Americans, we don't want the Portuguese, we don't want the Spanish. We want Timorese, we want Fijian. We want to be able to control the trade of our own natural resources. If a carbon credit leaves our country, it is with our permission and with our blessing, and it supports the people on the ground. You know, these are some pretty fundamental concepts to be able to control the trade of your own natural resources. And therefore you need the processes in place. It'll take 3 years, maybe 3-4 years to develop these processes. But within 3 or 4 years, people will have independent processes to international standards. And it's a different worldview. So I'm just going to go back one slide. Can I just go back one slide? So I'll just explain this a little bit. So we see the outcomes. If you're planting a tree in Timor or in Fiji, you're planting a carbon project for food, fuel, or protection. That is why you're planting a tree. if that tree lives to be over 25 years of age, you then get carbon sequestration and you may get a carbon credit. So the carbon project is about food, fuel and protection. An output of that is a carbon credit. So this particular model is the exact opposite to all of those other standards. All of those other standards, the reason why you do a carbon project is to get a carbon credit. It's to make money. It's not for food, it's not for fuel, it's not for protection. Protection is landslides. It's to make money. And we're flipping that. So I was saying, no, the reason why you plant a tree, as people do, it's food, fuel or protection. And if the tree's over 25 years, you'll get a carbon credit. So the carbon credit is a co-benefit to a well-managed project. And these are the methodologies that people can develop themselves. Now, we might go to the university in South Pacific, where where you went, or to the university in Timor to help develop these methodologies. But there are intelligent people within the Indo-Pacific, in the universities, within their science programs, who can develop these methodologies. And that's the approach we take. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
I might just see if there's any questions from the floor.
Thank you. Hi, Pedro. My name is Mark Tilley. I'm a journalist from Carbon Pulse. I was just reaching out to see when you expect that national registry to be established, and what countries do you think you'll be reaching out to specifically to pass on those Article 6 credits once those projects are established?
At the moment, we already trying to get the 6 support from our partners, and they are now developing the national carbon policy and framework and regulation. And also the MRV that is going to come with the registry at the national level. This one will target for the voluntary market first, because at the moment we have voluntary projects in the ground. Let's say it's 5 of them. And now we are also anticipating for the Article 6.2 and 4 implementation in the near future. And we are also seeking to establish the Article 6 infrastructure support for us. So this is going to be integrated at the national level. I know that it's been a challenge for us, but we know what we are doing, and then we also explore with our friends and partners. One of our good friends is from the Aboriginal Carbon Foundation. They have a good system procedure that in place to protect the local communities, to really get back what is rightful theirs, So we know that the voluntary carbon market give ways to others to come in, but it's the initiative of the government and all the agencies at the country level to really have the regulation established and in place. If you don't have that one, you will just there, and then they will just continue coming, because the market is there, So you want to wait there until you get everything lost and taken away, or you do some action and then establish something at the national level for your own benefit and for your people. So this is what my office and we are doing at the moment. And I think by mid of next year, we will have that policy established. And we already done the consolidation of the carbon actors in the country. And they are aware of that. And of course, we are open for exploring other carbon projects in the country. So this is not something that we want to impede or prevent the carbon activities in the country. But this is something that we want to better regulate, to have better accountability, better transparency, better benefit sharing, and we, as the ownership of the lands, we to ensure that the benefit is really coming back, not all those benefit is going out of the country. So this is the first thing that we want to ensure, the carbon policy and then the register. I know that the international register is not yet developed, it's still in the negotiation, but we need to act now or waiting for that register. I don't know when it's going to be approved, and it's going to take in time, we don't know. So at the national level, at least we need to have something that is supporting us to at least register, regulate something that is already in the ground. So this is very important, so we are doing that. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Fiona Wilson from Earthwatch. I work alongside and support incredible work that's happening in wetlands in Australia, alongside Aboriginal corporations who ask us to work with them. I'm interested to understand when they ask me about how they can develop their projects into something that may bear an economic and cultural and all the benefits that can come from well-managed land. Who do I send them to? Who do I help? Because I applaud what you're doing and want them to be able to do what they need. And as a non-Indigenous organisation, how do I walk alongside and support that ambition? And I'm sure there's others around us who want to know that question too.
So there's the next thing that's happening in Australia is what may occur around environmental markets, and particularly knowing and trying to crystal ball gaze into what may come out of the nature repair. But nonetheless, regardless of where government are moving and their actions, we're already seeing industry taking some active steps to be able to look at new methodologies. So you got the carbon industry, obviously, and then within the environmental markets, nature repair, we're going to see the emergence of new opportunities. And the key within that is to be able to identify Indigenous leadership within the methodology space, and to be able to secure that and initially to also build the investment in and around that. So that, I think that's part of the answer is to see where we go, and we're not waiting for that. We're actively out there now trying to find investment to be able to explore the methodologies and set a direction around that. But I might, Rowan, have you got another part of the answer to that question, or? The short answer is where they go is they go to Rowan. But yeah, we'll find a way of trying to, but that's the broader scene is just happening. Lisa?
I was just going to say that, there's a lot of systemic racism applied to small Aboriginal-led organisations, and for us, we have so many conversations and meetings, and often we're too small, often we're, too noisy, often we're just not, a square peg in a round hole. And we have so many nations who are ready to do the most incredible work, but we can't get funding to do it. And unfortunately, the savanna burning methodology is only applicable within that tight band across the top of Australia. And we're working with cultural fire practitioners, and we're trying to get investment to scale cultural fire practice nationally, which stops wildfires, which brings people back on country, brings back health, brings back everything. And we're still faced with these issues of arrogance. And one of the Canadian men this morning said, there's so many knowledges and so many solutions, but the issue really is there's a lack of humility. And that's our biggest challenge, is really trying to convince the powers that be and the people with the money that Aboriginal solutions are really, a very, if the way out of this mess. So that's our problem, is trying to get the funding to implement. So if anyone in the room wants to fund some really amazing work that contributes to sequestering all the carbon already up there, mitigating more fires, come and talk to us.
That's a great point, Lisa. So the cultural fire credit is already developed, and it's something that people can invest in tomorrow between the Aboriginal Carbon Foundation. It's on our website, but it's also on Five Sticks Alliance, who we've done work with around and partnering to be able to develop that methodology and that credit. Any other questions?
Thanks for that. It's Leah here. I just wanted to ask about the resourcing, and I think, Lisa, you sort of touched on it. You talk about the work that is happening in Fiji and Timor, and empowering people and supporting people over there to be able to develop their own methodologies. So who resources that type of work? Like, you had your slide up before, Rowan, with all your international corporates there. Did they support this work with our Indigenous communities across the globe, and to share that knowledge and learning in other parts, enable them to be able to develop their own methodologies and their own processes that suit their own place of being and their own cultural, needs? Who supports our important work on the ground? Like, resources it?
Well, national governments will, Timor-Leste will support it. There's the Green Climate Fund that will support it. Traditional Landowners in Fiji will support it financially as well. Those big international corporate companies, they'll come in and they'll develop those frameworks, and that's the little sweetener on the deal. They'll, they don't, they're not there for fun. They're there to make money out of you, and they'll come in and they'll have all those methodologies, have all those frameworks, have everything set up and say, just sign here. And, they will pay you lollies, and they will make millions and billions of dollars out of you. And that's the little sweetener of the deal, is that you don't have to do any work. You don't have to develop your own methodology. You don't have to develop your own public registry. We'll come in and do that all for you. Just sign here. And when you're signing here, you're signing over your rights to your carbon, and you're signing over the rights to your land. And so, it's like I've got a deal for you. And this is the problem that many, many countries are facing internationally. And I think in Africa has just woken up to the fact that they've signed huge carbon deals that nobody knows anything about. But look, you got to. Australia supports the Indo-Pacific in the development of the Indo-Pacific, and I'd like to see that as opposed to other countries within Asia supporting that.
It was an interesting point that was made at the Indigenous First Peoples Forum the other morning that I attended, and one of the lead speakers actually made the point of that what we're seeing is a new form of colonialism that's coming in, and it's about the rights to it's almost like the rights to oil, if you equate it that way, or gas. And that's what First Nations or Indigenous people in those countries are giving up those sovereign rights to that. So being able to, and not just carbon, but also, as I spoke of, around the space of what may come out of environmental markets and what's on the horizon with the global biodiversity framework. I see some big targets in there, but there's hidden dangers within that as well. Any more questions at the back?
Yeah, hi. My name's Greg. I'm working with WMO and UN Water on a project to quantify some of the water requirements of sequestration measures. And this question is for all of you, and it's not your job to do this, okay, but I would imagine that the water dependencies plus many of the other benefits beyond the food, the fuel and the protection are associated with these methods of sequestration. The biodiversity, natural medicines and things. Is someone documenting that? Not you've got enough to do, it's not your job, but just in terms of making sure that gets fed into those national or those global reports.
I'll throw it over to Rowan, but if I can just answer the first part your question, it was, the second part of your question was, so within the core benefits framework, we are investigating ways of, sort of cultural bioaccounting within that. Because what we're talking about is verification of those outcomes. But there's that other aspect that you just mentioned there is being able to know and account for the biocultural values that are there. So the short answer is yeah, but we're moving, and that's still a while away yet. But it is something that I'd like to see within these projects is to have those aspects where, and it's, within the science and within the methodology, being able to build Indigenous knowledge as an outcome and on equal footing with Western science is one aspect, but then being able to have that sound methodology where people are accounting for that and those biocultural indicators is another aspect. So tying those together is where we need, the work that we need to do yet. But Rowan or Lisa or Pedro, any other part of that? And I think it's around that, like what is it around the food and biodiversity and...
I guess for us, like we said, it's in this context of the projects that we're involved in, it's very much place-based and mob-based, so whatever comes from that. But that's not to say that they're not already doing all of that other research. But I think for us, this process is an impact measurement process, so it's not dictating that people collect data from the beginning. We're really mindful of, creating more work. If people feel that's important from their place, then I'm sure they're probably already doing that. Yeah. Yep.
I'm really worried about the water footprint of some of the traditional forestry traditions. It's a really big number, and that water is leaving from it.
Thanks.
Hi again. I'm just curious if anyone has had any interaction with the federal government relating to the Indo-Pacific carbon offset scheme, and why you don't think we haven't really seen much movement on that initiative from the government this year.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Expertise in climate change and carbon is an export that the Australian government can be actively making throughout the Indo-Pacific. We can do this with our family, our brothers and sisters in the Indo-Pacific. When the Australian Prime Minister met recently with the Pacific Island leaders, one of the things that we can provide is expertise in this area. We brought Timor-Leste people to Canberra a couple of months ago to meet with the Clean Energy Regulator and to meet with the ministers. It's curious as to why Australia doesn't play a stronger role in this area. I think as we lead up to COP31, and if Australia gets the nod, then I think it will become stronger. But people talk about exploitation of, there's all forms of exploitation. And when we sit down and talk with the Fijian traditional landowners, they talk to me about exploitation of their lands that goes it's right in front of us. And there doesn't seem to be another way. People get stuck on these corporate carbon companies coming in and exploiting them. And when you say, look, you can be independent, you can do this yourself, you're sort of a bit of a lone voice in the wilderness. I don't know why DFAT just don't say, look, come and talk to the Clean Energy Regulator. This is how you do it, or this is how we do it, and these are some ideas. And you don't have to be exploited. You can actually be independent. It seems to me like a no-brainer, but I don't know why.
Thanks for the great presentation. I'm really curious about, you talk a lot about the methodology and developing products and government policy. What's the relationship with those that are wanting to buy or purchase companies that are looking to reduce their emissions through purchasing offsets or investing in nature positive action, and how does that sort of relationship work between, and what does good look like?
The context of the Timor-Leste at the moment, since the carbon market is coming and out there, I believe that during this NDC period, it's going to be something that we want to explore. Because, during the CDM time, we didn't get any benefit out of it. But now later, with this Article 6, provide this carbon opportunity. So we are trying at least to explore some of the opportunity that can bring back some funding in the carbon scheme for people of Timor-Leste. Although we are very vulnerable, as we have said in this context, in the carbon corporate intervention on the big carbon project on this, but at the national level, we trying to assess all those risks, and we can seek the possibility that can benefit us. So this is very important. Because all those methodologies and then the mechanism, the process, later it will come back to the Paris Agreement, Article 6, to prevent the double counting, to ensure your NDCs, to implement your NDC, and how you track your NDC and at what level you have been contributed to achieve your NDCs. And I believe that the Australian and developed countries NDC is different to Timor-Leste and other LDCs countries. So what the LDCs and Timor-Leste can benefit is, we can say that we have our ambitious that beyond our NDCs. So when we get that carbon incentive, carbon credit, it's something that we want to get back, It's like climate finance through that carbon credit to support the developing countries and LDCs. So it must be done in a way, in such a methodology that can really align with the Paris Agreement Article 6, double counting, to have the impact that contribute to the reduction of emission, contribute to the net zero transition, and then also the NDC target. But at the back of that one is the benefit that really need to come for the country to help the community, which is as the victim of the impact of the climate change, which is we are not the one that caused the climate disaster, So this is the whole objective. And it depends on the countries like Timor-Leste to explore. And a very important thing that we need to ensure is to prevent the eco-colonialism that we are all talking about here. So this has been a challenge for us. And we are aware of that one. But we don't want just to be scared of that neocolonialism, and then you don't get those to explore those opportunities in the carbon market. So we are very vulnerable, very challenged, but we are trying to find something that is good for us. Otherwise, when that period of NDC implementation passes and we don't have any carbon market in the future, then it's just like the CDM times. You see, it doesn't benefit the country that has been victim by the climate change impacts. So this is our perspective. So we are trying, and of course we seek support for the countries, partners that already have this advanced system in place, and we are trying to have that. And it should be like a collaborative manner, How can we all together to reduce the emission, and the benefit must be shared to those who has the rightful owners of the nature and then the environment that they have. So this is what we are trying to do. Yes. Because the big challenge now is we are dealing with the international market. It's not the domestic market. We understand that slowly we can, when we develop our infrastructure, our system, then we want to have for the domestic market. But at the moment, the international market can offer the benefit, but it depends on us. How can we really ensure those risks that we just mentioned, and we are aware of that one. So I think with the support of good friends, really will develop the carbon industry for Timor-Leste and Fiji and in the region is very important. And I think Australia is a big market that should lead in the role in a way for this market to evolve and to give the opportunities for small island countries in the Pacific. This is my perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, Pedro. Are there any more questions from the floor?
Fiona Ryan from Forest Development and Climate. I've seen that you guys have been successful in getting funding from organisations and stuff, but for most, I see that the carbon credit is plus 25 years sequestration. I mean, that's a long, long time investment, and obviously a lot of communities wouldn't have the resources to wait 24 years, so you need outside funding, say, in that time. So I was just wondering, is the original investment in planting trees or whatever, is that, is that funded independently of the carbon credits? Or how do the carbon credits feed in? Or is there some interim way of issuing carbon credits as the trees grow?
Hello. It really comes down to the methodology. So in Australia, you can start to earn, with vegetation management methodologies, after about 5 years, you can start to earn carbon credits. But the reason why we plant the tree is not because of carbon. The reason why we plant the tree is to produce food for the family, to provide protection for the family, and to provide fuel. So the effects are immediate in terms of, the tree will grow and the benefit will be from the tree as long as the tree is healthy and happy. And then it's up to the methodology as to when the carbon credits might be issued. In Australia, it's around about 5 years.
We went into this project not wanting to raise anyone's hopes around these projects becoming carbon projects. So all along they were driven by the ministries of agriculture and their forestry department from those districts. So the people in Bokau decided what trees should be planted, and there's a choice of trees. There's 16 different trees in 3 groups. That one group is for food, one group is for protection, and that means stabilising the soil. There's been a lot of deforestation and landslides, so those trees have been chosen because they'll put a lot of nutrients back into the soil and stabilise the soil. And then the last group is livelihoods. So people survive on firewood, selling firewood. They need firewood for eating, cooking, for making fences. So there's a whole range of trees that every family gets to choose 100 trees across these 3 groups. So even if they don't develop into carbon projects, they were always going to be good community development projects. And that's because we're community developers and social workers and land management people, not bankers. And so that's the lens that we've applied to this work. Yeah.
I think this kind of work is very much supported by the government, and we are trying to maximize the benefit of the carbon credit, channel into the carbon fund that we are planning to establish at the national level, and that carbon fund will secure the fees that you export the carbon, sell outside of the country, and the fees must be there, and those fee and the benefit that is there will be channeled into that fund, and that fund will be channeled back into the activities that you just mentioned, where it's not registered in the carbon scheme yet. So we are not doing something that only in the carbon scheme, but the activities that contribute to the environment, biodiversity, climate change, even it's not yet registered in the carbon register, need to be supported, because that's a holistic approach that we can ensure contribution to the climate and also the environment. So this is also one way of funding that we are doing, and of course there's some other funds that are available we can access, but it's pretty hard to access those big funds. But we are trying at the national level that all the funds that is coming from the carbon credit, it needs to be channeled back into the activities that is really contribute to the environment and climate, and to the local community to use it for their adaptation and the mitigation at their village or their community level. Yes.
One question at the front here.
Hi, I'm Vincent Hart from Chile. I'm a Master of Environmental Science student. I am really not familiar with how the carbon market works in Australia or in the whole Indo-Pacific area. But I've been working in that space in Latin America and more related maybe to the more traditional carbon registries. I'm just curious how you're thinking. I understand that it will to do your own platforms and registries and all those mechanisms. Just curious how you think, if you think it's possible to get to scale without the carbon credit upfront payments, but the carbon payments in the initial stage, considering just that the idea of the carbon credit could be like to incentivize scale and even funding to start more projects. I think you mentioned that we're having problems with the funding. Just curious what the vision is to get to the scale that the climate crisis needs. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is a very important question. And, if we go back into the old days of the conventional bilateral assistance for countries like us, it was you trying to support the people in the country that is with the concept that you are keeping feeding them, and they are keeping action. But with this carbon market that is now available, the scheme that is there, how can you utilize this bilateral fund or the donors' money to invest to support, to provide upscale investment at the initial stage of the carbon project, or any project that can later be considered as the carbon project. And the bilateral funds and donors' money can do that. And later, you don't need to keep going giving the funds to the country, to the community. They will use that carbon credit money to sustain and to scale up the activities in their community. So this is already happening, in some of the developing countries. So, the question is, the ODA funds, bilateral funds that support the countries, they really need to do the assessment, reflection of the support in the old times and then now. What is the possibility, the market that is available for providing support for the community that later they will sustain themselves and then they can just upscale, leverage their activity into the next level. So I think this is something that's happening, I can say that it's now happening in Timor. And we encourage other bilateral funds at the initial stage to support. And those donors funds also can do the same, you see. So in that way, when we have that continuous, and I believe that later in the future, there won't be a continuation of the funds that provide, but the community will be independent, sustained, and how can they replicate or duplicate those funds at other scales of the projects. Yes.
Thanks, Pedro. I think the other aspect is, and I know it's just gone on to 2:30 now, but the other aspect is, so you may have missed the introduction where Rowan was talking about the key outcomes are those community and social outcomes, and it's really trying to fundamentally turn upside down, because in Australia with the Savannah Fire methodology, the outcome should be about country, about managing right fire on country, and the carbon is an outcome of that. But that's what we're seeing. This sort of, and it's almost getting perverse that the credit is the almighty thing that's driving. So being able to turn that around, you know, like and say, well, let's think about people first, and think about the environment first, not the outcome of the credit. You know, go out and produce what you need to do to be able to produce that almighty credit. It's like the, you know, tail wagging the dog. But we need to turn that around. It's about country first and foremost, and then people within that, because people are part of that country. Are we? One more question.
I'm sorry, I was late. So I am the co-chair of the UN Global Innovation Hub, greenhouse gas accounting working group. I am really happy to see your methodology, which is very much in line with what we are trying to develop. Having said that, we have three requirements in developing our methodology. First one is a demand-based approach. Second one is knowledge sharing. Third one is digitalization of the production, transport, and the consumption. So having said what kind of the digital techniques you are using each stage of the life cycle of food in terms of the production, transport, and consumption. UN strongly encourage us to use the blockchain or the distributed ledger technology in our methodology to ensure transparency of the data. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes. So I think there's a couple of parts to that, Pedro. One is the aspects around the outcomes and within the methodology and ongoing community surety through that process. And I think the other aspect is the question around, and Rowan, you might be able to talk. We talk about the integrity and the technology around blockchains and stuff. So maybe Pedro, just around the projects themselves and ensuring the integrity around that.
I think at the project level, you really need to have a governance system in place. The first thing is you need to have a system that can ensure the accountability and the transparency. And also you need to have the tracking system where you can track your mitigation activities, your project activities. And also you can track and record your crediting, carbon credit. And that's will also supported by the MRV, the tools, technology that you need to be integrated into the project activities to ensure the quantification of the carbon that you measure. You need to have quantifiable measurement in order to really know the quantity of the emission that you have been sequestered, and that is going to be translated into the carbon credit that you have. So you have the baseline already established at the initial stage of the project, and later with that mechanism and methodology and then technology, which is the MRV, you will know that from the intervention you have managed to reduce this mitigation or the emission that you have, and you can use that as a carbon credit. And you need to have the independent agency, certification agency that can validate and certify that. And that's the program level. From the government level, we can also do that in order to have our own verification of that one. When you have the system, the register in place on that one. So we can have the double mechanism that in place for this. Yes, from the project level, the certification that we have under the gold standard, I believe that they have very good methodology already in place. But from the government side, we need to ensure that the emission that is being claimed, being reduced, is how much. And later, the government will have that in its inventory system, because it's going to be linked into the NDCs, and then it's going to be reported to the UNFCCC. So it's complex and it's integrated, as long as you know what you're doing and where everything is going to be reported to. So, and at the same time, you know how to get the benefits that is going to be shared for you and for the community itself. I think, thank you.
Okay, thanks for your time this afternoon. Can you just quickly join a hand in thanking Pedro, Lisa and Rowan. Please have a look and follow us on social media. We will have some updates on how we're going with the project, both in Timor and Fiji. Thanks.